In the summer of 1976, the West Indies team was visiting England to play a 5-test match series and 3 one-day internationals during the English summer. Now, even before this series had started, there was a controversy that broke out because the English captain, Tony Greig, during one of the TV interviews that he was giving, went on to say that he didn't think that the West Indies team was that great, given the performance against the Indian side and the Australian team in the previous 2 series that they had played. And he also said that he would make the West Indian team grovel.
If they get on top, they are magnificent cricketers. But if they're down, they grovel.
Now, the term grovel was taken as a racist slur by the English captain, and it wasn't taken very kindly by the West Indian team. And that statement by Tony Greig helped galvanize the West Indian team, and they became even more determined to prove their worth in that series. Now, there was a very interesting tradition that used to happen for test matches that were played in England, where every match that was played in England used to start on a Thursday. And after 3 days of play, there was a rest day on Sunday. And I read somewhere that that rest day on Sunday was given to enable the players to go to the church. So whether that was true or not is something that I'm not sure of. But in those days, after 3 days of play, the 4th day being the rest day was something which was followed the world over. However, they would not really insist on starting the match on a Thursday. So that was something very interesting which used to happen in those days, which changed over time. Now, the West Indian team which went to England, and by this time they had already realized that their strength lay in fast bowling, so they went with 3 proper fast bowlers in Roberts, Holding and Wayne Daniel, and 3 fast medium bowlers in Holder, Julian and Collis King, who was making his debut in that series. Of course, they had a star-studded batting lineup led by Clive Lloyd and Richards and Greenidge and Fredericks and Kalicharan. So this was a fairly formidable team. On the other hand, the English team was also coming fresh off a successful Ashes series against Australia, which they had won. They had also beaten other international teams in the recent past, so they were high on confidence. And their team was a mix of experienced players like John Edrich and Brian Close, fast bowlers John Snow and Underwood. And of course, some of the newer players like David Steele, Mike Brearley made his debut in that series, Bob Woolmer, and even Peter Willey, who later on became an international umpire. So that was the composition of the 2 teams, and the build-up, of course, to the series was quite spectacular given the statement given by Tony Greig. But the first 2 test matches that happened were pretty eventful, so that they ended in a draw. And it's only from the 3rd test match onwards the West Indian team came into their own and won the remaining 3 matches to win the series 3-0. Now, some interesting facts about that series are that Richards played only 4 out of the 5 test matches. He was unwell for one of the matches, and in those 4 matches he scored more than 800 runs. This included 2 double centuries and 1 century. And one of the double centuries, he scored 291, which was his highest test score during his playing career. When he scored that 291, that was his 7th century in that year. And in doing so, he broke the previous record of Gary Sobers of 6 centuries in one calendar year. He went on to score 1,710 runs in that calendar year, which remained a world record for the next 30 years. And, Richards had really arrived at the world stage, and he was now being seen as the best batsman playing the game. Gordon Greenidge, who had a miserable series in Australia where he was dropped, also played very well in this series. In fact, he hit hundreds in 3 consecutive innings, 2 in the 3rd test and 1 in the 4th test, and he also played pretty well, along with the other batsmen in the West Indian series. Tony Greig also did his bit, played pretty well, had a century to his name along with Alan Knott. But the fact is that West Indies won the series 3-0, and this happened to be the first of the 7 series wins that the West Indian team were to have against England on the trot. Much was written about this series. Also, there was a book called Grovel, The Story and Legacy of the Summer of 1976. In fact, there is a documentary called Fire of Babylon, and a big section of that is dedicated to this series. So this series, of course, got a lot of press. But what is important to understand is that if you look at the statistics of the series, the West Indian fast bowlers took 88 of the 92 English wickets that fell in that series. And in the last 3 test matches which West Indies won, they took 59 of the 60 English wickets that fell. So clearly the formula for West Indies was defined, and they went on to follow this policy of a pace-based attack for the next 20 odd years, and dominated the world of cricket like no other team has for the next 15 years after 1979. They remained undefeated. They didn't lose a single series, and that's the kind of dominance that West Indies had in that era. West Indian captain Clive Lloyd, who had visited India in the last few years, he was also very interested in Hindi film music, and his favorite song, incidentally, was a song which